eighth day of testimony as the court heard the voice of Teresa Hallbach.
I'm the photographer, and I'm just giving a call to let you know that I could come out there today in the afternoon. It would probably be around 2 o'clock or even a little later. If you could please give me a call back and let me know if that'll work for you, because I don't have your address or anything, so I can't stop by without getting a call back from you.
Manitowoc County Sheriff Detective Dave Remacher testified that he found that message on the answering machine of Barb Yonda, Stephen Avery's sister, and that it was recorded on the day she disappeared. Day 8 of testimony, meanwhile, started with a vehement denial from Manitowoc Sheriff Lieutenant James Lank.
Lieutenant Lank, did you ever obtain any blood from the clerk's office, or did you obtain any blood from any location and plant it anywhere on the Avery salvage property?
No, sir, absolutely not.
Did you ever plant it anywhere in Teresa Hallbach's vehicle or anywhere where it could be found as part of this investigation?
No, sir, definitely not.
Did you ever assist any other officer so that another officer could either plant evidence or try to in some way frame Mr. Avery for this homicide?
No, sir.
And lastly, had you ever heard from any member of the Manitowoc County law enforcement community that they had participated in some frame-up or planting of evidence?
No, sir, there was not.
And just to make sure, since we've gone through the key evidence, did you have any occasion to plant Teresa Hallbach's key or place her key in Mr. Avery's residence?
Absolutely not.
But on cross-examination, Lieutenant Lank had this exchange with defense attorney Dean Strang.
Do you suppose that if you had taken a vial of blood from the clerk of court's office, planted it or caused it to be planted in Teresa Hallbach's vehicle, and told no one before today, do you suppose that if a defense lawyer stood up and asked you, did you plant blood in Teresa Hallbach's car, do you suppose you'd tell me?
Yes, sir. I
you
did
would?
not.
And if you had done it, do you think you'd admit it here under oath?
I didn't do that. It's ridiculous.
Would you admit it under oath if you
Under
had?
oath, I would admit it, yes.
I'm sorry?
If I did it, I would admit it.
When Detective Remacher testified later in the day, he said planting blood in Hallbach's car would have been next to impossible.
Now, while you were there, we've heard from other deputies that were on scene, but let me ask you specifically, did you touch or otherwise disturb that vehicle?
That vehicle wasn't touched at all. I looked at the VIN number, glanced in the back window. That vehicle was not touched.
Well, how can you be so sure?
Because the way it was concealed, the suspicious nature of it, I knew we had something on our hands here. And I've very specifically instructed nobody to even touch the vehicle, don't check the doors, nothing.
The day wrapped up with the start of the state's direct examination of Calumet County Sheriff's Deputy Dan Kaharski.
I was paired up with a single handler and a dog, and we started out in the actual portion of the salvage yard that held the cars. It was kind of on a lower grade than the rest of the property, and we proceeded to go up and down the rows with the dog, searching for a body.
Recapping Day 8 of the Stephen Avery trial, Dan O'Donnell, News Radio 620 WTMJ. The day began with the end of testimony from Calumet County Sheriff's Deputy Dan Kaharski.
Did you believe that either Lieutenant Link or Sergeant Colburn had an opportunity out of your eyesight to place or what's called plant that key there?
No, they did not.
How can you be so sure?
Well, first of all, they would have had to have the key. I think the only person that would have had the key was the person that killed Teresa.
Objection, speculation. Sustained. Move to strike.
The court will order the answer stricken.
That exchange led to a response that was out of this world.
If we're just limiting it to if it was possible that they could do it without me seeing it, I'd just say, yes, I guess it is possible.
All right. And is that in the sense of anything's possible?
That's in the sense of it's possible aliens put it there, I guess.
From there, the court beamed up to its lunchtime recess, and afterward...
At this time, we are on the record outside the presence of the jury. We're going to begin by taking up a matter which was brought to the court's attention yesterday. That is, the court received a note from the jury bailiff that one of the jurors raised a question indicating that after Deputy Remacher testified, the juror realized that the juror did not know him by name, but had been a juror in a jury trial some years ago in which Detective Remacher was involved, and conscientiously raised the question whether that was a problem in this case.
The defense argued that this prior involvement with a witness in which the juror awarded Detective Remacher $100,000 amounted to objective juror bias and moved to strike her for cause, but Judge Patrick Willis denied this motion.
I just don't see anything nor any reason why someone who was a juror in a case 6 or 7 years ago would of necessity be unable to be fair and impartial in a case such as this. She's an intelligent person. I think she can separate and tell the difference between the two, and I don't think, more importantly, that there's any particular motivation simply because she participated in a civil trial that long ago, any objective reason why she should be more or less inclined to believe him in his testimony in this case. So the court is going to deny the motion to strike this juror for cause.
After that was settled, the jury was brought back in to hear testimony from Calumet County Sheriff Special Investigator Gary Steyer.
On March 1st, Investigator Steyer, upon a search of the garage of Stephen Avery, was any particular item of interest located?
There were several items that were collected that were of interest. Two of the items were bullet fragments collected inside the garage.
Because Steyer also does undercover work with a Metro drug unit, Judge Willis ruled that the courtroom cameras not show his face, but the cameras were again rolling as State Division of Crime Investigation Special Agent Kevin Heimerl testified to round out the day.
Could you describe generally what you did or what you were asked to do in that examination?
Yes. Myself and several other investigators were given the assignment or the responsibility to examine all of the debris that was removed from the burn area or the burn pit. And that debris was collected by other investigators and was packaged and ultimately brought to the State Crime Laboratory in Madison.
Could you tell us what that is, please?
It appears to be a clothing rivet, similar to what I described, that you would find on a pair of denim pants, for instance.
All right. And was this clothing rivet that was identified, easily identified, or at least identified with writing right on the rivet?
Yes.
And what does the rivet say?
The rivet is stamped Daisy Fuentes.
Recapping day 9 of the Stephen Avery trial, Dan. The last day of the second week started with the departure of a juror, but unlike Thursday, there wasn't a dispute. A man had an out-of-state death in the family and asked to be excused. Neither side objected, and now the jury pool stands at 15. But Friday did see a dispute over sweep searches of the Avery family property.
We have an approach that suggests that somehow the Fourth Amendment and the correlative provision of the Wisconsin Constitution allows sort of warm-up searches. Calisthenics, dry runs. And we're at the right time of the year for Cactus League exhibition games if this were baseball, but it's not.
Defense attorney Dean Strang renewed a motion to suppress evidence seized during those searches, but Special Prosecutor Thomas Fallon argued that this motion has no basis.
And the reasonableness of the searches engaged has been demonstrated to a degree that should remove not only a reasonable doubt, but any doubt.
But Judge Patrick Willis put off ruling on the motion, saying he would wait to hear all the evidence. Then the state called its first witness, Teresa Hallbach's younger sister, Katie.
We would watch movies or watch TV or play card games or just hang out.
All right. Let me ask you, Katie, like most sisters, Would you ever talk about shopping or clothes or things like that?
Yes.
Katie testified about a pair of Teresa's Daisy Fuentes jeans, rivets from which the state says were found in a burn pit on the Avery property.
How do you know that she had a pair of Daisy Fuentes jeans?
Well, one day she showed me a new pair of jeans she had, and I noticed that the brand was Daisy Fuentes, and I knew that Daisy Fuentes was an older person, so I told Teresa that she has old person jeans.
She also identified a lanyard she gave Teresa, a part of which the state found connected to Teresa's car key in Stephen Avery's trailer. The state's next witness was forensic scientist Ronald Groffey with the State Crime Lab.
My duty is to examine photographic evidence, take pictures of evidence that is submitted to the laboratory, evidence that may be used as part of analysis. There might be things on evidence that needs to be imaged before other analysts also or scientists can look at it. That's our primary duties.
And the afternoon was filled by the state's direct examination of another crime lab scientist, DNA analyst Sherry Culhane, who's analyzed Stephen Avery's DNA before this case.
And you yourself performed this testing?
Yes, I did.
And because of the testing that you performed, and because of the search of the CODIS databank, what happened to Mr. Avery?
I believe he was freed from prison.
And that was because of the testing that you did?
Correct.
But now her testimony could help put Avery back in prison, as she said she found his DNA on 10 spots in Teresa Halbach's car.
And the DNA profile that you developed from item A8, the blood stain found near the ignition of Teresa Halbach's SUV, did you compare that profile with the profiles that you developed from all the other standards in this case?
Yes, I did.
And what were your results?
It was not consistent with any of the other standards.
It was only consistent with the DNA profile of Stephen Avery?
Correct.
Did you arrive at a statistical number for this profile that would reflect how often or how rare or how common this profile would be in the population?
Yes, I did.
And I would ask if this slide correctly displays that statistic?
Yes, it does.
And could you explain to the jurors what that statistic is?
This number tells me that the probability of another unrelated random person in the population having the same profile as the evidence samples that we just talked about is 1 person in 4 quintillion in the Caucasian population.
And Culhane also found Teresa Halbach's DNA in that car, as well as on a bullet fragment found in Avery's garage. But she admitted that she inadvertently contaminated one of the tests with her own DNA, a mistake that she said didn't at all affect the results.
During the extraction procedure, I inadvertently introduced my own DNA into the negative control.
Did that have any impact on your interpretation of your results?
It did not have any impact as far as the profile from the evidence sample. It's just the fact that I introduced my own DNA into the manipulation control.
Still, that slip-up figures to play a central role when Avery's defense cross-examines her on Monday morning.